Don't mind me as I hobble a bit. I sort of blew out my knee. And we are at 42nd Street Pete's Grindhouse, Halloween Extravaganza 2025, and we only got till Friday, and I figured, well, you know something? Let me do one day up until Friday, then I might take a little time off and rethink things. Um, but anyway, I've covered Lugosi, I've covered Cheney, now it's time to cover Karloff. And hard to pick one film out of his, God, his body of work is so fucking huge, it isn't funny, and so many great performances. But the one that I just decided to revisit, I'm trying to get a date on this, 1945, The Body Snatcher. One of those films produced by Val Lewton, who come up with I Walked with a Zombie and Isle of the Dead and some other stuff. This was directed by Robert Wise. And Karloff is Gray, a cabbie, who we see in the beginning of the film ingratiating himself with this crippled girl who is being brought to this doctor to see if she can be cured of her paralysis or whatever, and you think this guy's all kind of kindly and shit. And then the doctor's apprentice is going down to the cemetery where he sees this guy, this woman crying over her son's grave, and the grave's being guarded by a little dog. And he's saying something about, hiring a grave watcher or something like that. She can't afford it. And then in the middle of the night, you see the shadow of somebody come across and the dog barking, and the dog gets killed by a shovel. Well, it's the kindly old cab driver Gray who delivers the body to the doctor, played by Henry Daniell, who should be familiar to us old-timers because he's been in a ton of Universal stuff, and was also in Four Skulls of Jonathan Drake, and actually died on Halloween night back in the 60s. So people should, remember him. He was a creepy character, a strong character actor, actually, always a villain. And very over the top here is this doctor who didn't give a shit how he got the bodies. So the apprentice pays Gray and immediately dislikes him, and he's basically told that goes with the territory because he wants to quit. Well, he also wants to, then there's a sad scene where the woman's coming out of the cemetery carrying the dead dog, and she goes, they killed his wee dog too. And you really fucking hate Karloff in this because, he comes across as so sweet and nice, and he's such a scumbag. And he also has something over the doctor. They go back years ago, and it looks like that the Gray took the fall for the doctor because the doctor didn't have the balls to do it. So anyway, it goes on where, the younger doctor wants to cure this girl of her paralysis, and then actually has to go to Gray to say, we need a specimen, and there's this young girl who's always singing on the street corner, and after this guy goes to Gray, you hear her sing, and then you hear her get cut off. And she's delivered, and all of a sudden this guy realizes what he fucking just participated in. So now Gray keeps baiting Toddy, as he calls the doctor, that's the name he fucking hates, and keeps baiting him with this. And finally, they do the surgery, and the girl claims she can't walk. And she still can't walk. It's a psychological thing. But in the beginning, Gray had told her that the horse was his horse was her friend, and if you hear the horse nicker, you'll know it's the horse. So anyway, Bela Lugosi is credited like almost third billed, I believe, in this, but he's Joseph, the doctor's assistant, and goes to confront Gray and shake him down for some money, and Gray gets him drunk and kills him and deposits the body in the salt water in the doctor's basement where they keep the specimens. So now the doctor confronts Gray, wants him gone, and wants to pay him gone, and he just basically tells him, you'll never get rid of me. It's like this whole, bullying, weird fucking hold that Gray has over him. So they fight, and basically the doctor kills Gray and decides, well, something, I'll dissect him too. And they take him back. So the apprentice and the doctor were out somewhere and staying in this tavern rather, when these people come in from a funeral and start talking about, you know, this and that and the other thing. And the doctor sees another opportunity to get a fresh corpse for, you know, dissection, proving what a scumbag he is. So they basically go down, they dig up the woman, and they're riding back in a rainstorm, and something's going on in the doctor's mind. He keeps hearing Gray's voice going, "Toddy, you'll never get rid of me now." And lightning flashes, and he pulls the shroud off the woman, and it's Gray, and he causes the carriage to crash. And after the young assistant was thrown free, walks over, finds out it is the old woman, but somehow Gray was still in the doctor's mind and made him crash the carriage. I mean, like I said, this is a really good one, and people don't talk about it a lot because, like I said, Karloff's body of work is so huge that, you know, you just can sink. I could sit here for hours and go over film by film, you know, of so much stuff he's done. I mean, you know, starting with, you know, being the original Frankenstein monster and conveying that, you know, so much over the screen, and then, you know, going on to play these mad scientist types and these villainous types and these heavies, which he was really fucking good at, and then actually being the voice of the Grinch, and, you know, for the Grinch That Stole Christmas, a kid's thing. Then, you know, doing, you know, some really oddball things like going over to Italy and being in Mario Bava's Black Sabbath, and that one segment is the Wordalac, and then, you know, being the host of that whole thing, you know, in the you know, when it was released over here, it was all dubbed back into, you know, dubbed into English, and Boris Karloff became the host between the three segments in the film. And there was that, and then, you know, the scatter shot film, The Terror, you know, that Corman had shot because Karloff had owed him some time. And then, you know, Karloff wasn't afraid to parody himself either. You know, Comedy of Terrors, The Raven, popping up in a Beach Party movie as a cameo, and then, you know, a lot of TV stuff, you know, in his later years. And, you know, probably the last, you know, people, you know, poo-poo off Die Monster Die, the one with Nick Adams and stuff, the Lovecraft one. And I think the reason they do, not because Boris was bad in it, because he wasn't. It was because up until it got restored, you know, for Blu-ray, it was a pretty murky looking film, and you really couldn't see what was going on half the time. But now it's a lot better. But as far as the last best, you know, his swan song, I would say, would have to be Peter Bogdanovich's Targets, where he played, you know, the aging horror film star confronting, you know, what we still have, snipers, modern day killers. And it was sort of like, you know, I know he did those Mexican films, but he wasn't really in them. He shot his stuff in Los Angeles. And then he was over in England to do Curse of the Crimson Altar, that was released here as The Crimson Cult. And from what I remember, that might have been the film that killed him, because I think he got pneumonia being outside there and didn't recover, and he passed away in 1969. So, and, you know, it was weird because, you know, growing up, you could, you know, Boris was still there. I mean, I don't remember Lugosi or Chaney that much, because they were in, like, you know, they were in a couple 50s TV shows that popped up here and there, where I didn't see him. But, you know, Karloff, you know, was, you know, viable up until the day he died, it seemed. You know, he just kept on working. And, you know, from all I've ever heard of him, he was a sweet, sweet man, a pleasure to be around, just a great man in general. And, you know, I know his daughter makes the convention, runs at the convention circuits representing, you know, the Karloff name. So his name will never die, and he gave us some really great stuff. So that's our show for today. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow with some more south of the border horrors. So we'll see you then.